My sister Brianna walked into my mother's sunroom with an empty zoo gift bags swinging from her wrist and a smile I had known since childhood. "Relax," she said, dropping the bag on the wicker table. "I left Leo at the zoo." My mother, Claire, laughed before I could breathe, not a nervous laugh, not confusion. A pleased little sound, sharp and light. "Good," she said. "Maybe now he'll stop acting like Grandma Margaret's little prince." At that moment, my 5-year-old son was sitting at the Riverbend Zoo security desk beside the penguin exhibit, clutching a stuffed otter he had chosen for his great-grandmother's memorial shelf, asking a guard if he had been bad. I did not scream. I did not throw the coffee cup in my hand. I did not ask my sister how she could abandon a child, or ask my mother what kind of grandmother laughs when a little boy is left alone in a public place. I walked into the hallway bathroom, locked the door, and made one phone call. Not to Brianna, not to my mother, not even to the police first. I called Nora Keene, the attorney my grandmother had hired before she died. I said, "The minor safety clause is triggered." Nora went silent for exactly 2 seconds. Then she said, "Take your son home. I will handle the rest." 30 minutes later, my sister was crying so hard she could barely speak, and my mother's face had gone the color of paper. "My name is Celia Hart. I am 34 years old. I am a widow, a mother, and a woman who spent most of her life believing that staying calm was the same thing as staying safe. I live in Portland, Oregon, in a narrow blue house with rain gutters that need replacing, and a kitchen window that looks onto a maple tree my son named Captain Red. I edit museum catalogs and historical exhibit scripts for a living, which means I spend my days making sure dead people are represented accurately and living donors are not accidentally offended. I know how to check dates, preserve context, and phrase painful truths so they can survive in public. That skill was useful in my family, too useful. My mother, Claire Winthrop, raised manipulation the way other women raise roses. She clipped it, watered it, presented it in vases, and called it love. She was beautiful in the exhausting way, always polished, always scented, always ready to make a room feel guilty for not arranging itself around her. My younger sister Brianna inherited that talent and added glitter. Brianna could cry on command by 11, flirt by 13, and turn any consequence into a story about how sensitive she was by 16. I was the reliable one. Reliable is a dangerous word in families that do not like accountability. It starts as praise and becomes a job description before you notice you never applied. My son's name is Leo. He has brown eyes like his father, one dimple like me, and the habit of asking if old buildings are lonely when nobody lives in them. He was 5 years old on the day Brianna left him at the zoo. 5, old enough to remember, too young to understand why adults would ever do something cruel on purpose. His father, Simon, died when Leo was 2. A delivery truck slid through a red light on a wet January morning and hit his car on the driver's side. The police officer who came to my door held his hat in both hands. That detail stays with me, his hat, his hands. The sound of my son laughing in the living room while the world ended 6 feet away. My grandmother Margaret Ellis moved into my house for 3 weeks after the funeral. Not my mother, not my sister, my grandmother. She arrived with a suitcase, a binder, and a recipe box. She cooked soup, answered condolence texts, sat beside me while I signed insurance forms, and slept in the chair outside Leo's bedroom because, as she put it, a grieving child should never wake up to a dark hallway. She was the first person who looked at Leo after Simon died and saw not tragedy, not inconvenience, not a symbol, but a child who liked blueberries and trucks and sleeping with one sock on. That is why she loved him. That is why they hated him. My grandmother had money, but she never wore it loudly. Her wealth came from 3 family-owned garden centers she and my grandfather built from dirt lots in the 1970s. Ellis Garden and Home started as one greenhouse, then 3 stores, then commercial landscaping contracts, then land. By the time I was born, my grandparents were not billionaires or anything ridiculous, but they were very comfortable. Comfortable enough that my mother built her personality around what she expected to inherit. My grandmother saw that too. She saw everything. When I was little, Grandma Margaret was the adult who asked questions and waited for honest answers. If Brianna broke something and I tried to cover for her, Grandma would say, "Celia, the truth is not cruel just because someone dislikes hearing it." If Mom called me dramatic for crying, Grandma would sit beside me and say, "Your mother confuses quiet with virtue. Do not let her make you disappear." I still disappeared. Not entirely, not all at once, but in small ways. I gave up the bigger bedroom because Brianna needed sunlight for her mood. I let my mother borrow my college graduation money because she wanted to help Brianna recover from a bad breakup. I hosted holidays because Mom said my house had the best flow. I apologized for things I had not done because peace felt cheaper than proof. Then Leo was born. Children rearrange family systems by existing honestly. A baby has no social strategy. A toddler does not flatter the right aunt. A 5-year-old does not understand why Grandma Margaret's lap should be available equally to people who only visit when cake is served. Grandma adored Leo. She taught him plant names, how to pat soil around basil, why worms are useful, and how to greet my grandfather's portrait in the hallway, even though Grandpa Thomas had been gone for 8 years. She called him Little Fox because he was small, watchful, and always sneaking crackers. Brianna hated it, not at first openly. She joked, "Wow, Leo gets the Garden Queen treatment." "Careful, Sally. Grandma's going to leave the whole greenhouse to your kid. Must be nice having the only grandchild who matters." My mother would laugh and say, "Brianna, don't be jealous of a child." But she said it fondly, like jealousy was charming. Like my son was a guest stealing attention at a dinner party. Grandma Margaret got sick in the spring of 2024. Pancreatic cancer. Quacriate brutal, and already farther along than anyone wanted to say out loud. The oncologist gave her a year. She took 9 months and used everyone like it had been scheduled. She organized paperwork while my mother organized flowers. She moved accounts while Brianna posted black and white selfies from hospital corridors with captions about family strength. She sat with Leo in her den and recorded videos of herself showing him how to repot seedlings because she knew she would not be there when he was older. One afternoon in July, she asked me to bring Leo to her house alone. "No, Mother." "No, Brianna." I thought she wanted a quiet visit. Instead, I found Nora Keene sitting at the dining room table with 3 folders, 2 pens, and the expression of a woman who did not waste daylight. Nora was my grandmother's attorney, mid-50s, silver hair cut at her jaw, voice like a locked cabinet. She had represented Grandma for 18 years and had never once laughed at one of Brianna's jokes, which made Brianna call her that refrigerator woman. Grandma sat in her armchair beside the window with a blanket over her knees. Leo sat on the floor building a zoo out of wooden blocks. "Celia," Grandma said, "I need you to listen and not argue." That sentence terrified me because she knew I argued only when something hurt. She told me she had amended the Ellis family trust. She told me she had added a minor safety clause. She told me she had changed successor trustee language and distribution conditions. She said any beneficiary who knowingly endangered a minor descendant, used a child as leverage, attempted unauthorized school or medical access, or participated in abandonment would lose discretionary distributions and any trustee eligibility immediately upon documentation. I stared at her. "Grandma, why would you need that?" She looked at Leo. He had placed a wooden tiger upside down and was explaining that it was sleeping in a tree. "Because some people resent what they cannot control," she said. "And your mother and sister resent him." I wanted to deny it. Even then, even after years of comments and eye rolls and missed birthdays, I wanted to say Mom would never. Brianna is immature, but not dangerous. Nobody would punish a 5-year-old for being loved. Grandma lifted one hand before I could speak. "I am not asking you to agree today," she said. "I am asking you to know the papers exist." Nora slid a folder toward me. Inside was not the full trust. Just a letter of instruction and a card with emergency contacts. Nora Keene, direct office line. Walt Adler, trust protector. Riverbend Family Safety Protocol, it said at the top. Grandma had named it like a museum exhibit. "This is extreme," I whispered. Grandma's eyes sharpened. "So is leaving a child to carry adult jealousy." I remember that exact sentence because at the time it sounded almost theatrical. Later it sounded like a bell rung in advance. She made me promise 3 things. First, Leo's school pickup list would never include Brianna without my written confirmation for each event. Second, if anyone separated Leo from me in a public place without permission, I would document before confronting. Third, if my mother or sister ever turned cruelty toward my child, I would not negotiate family peace before child safety. I promised. Then I partially broke every promise slowly. Not because I did not care. Because family pressure works like rain on stone. It does not need to be dramatic. It just needs time. By fall, Grandma was in hospice at home. My mother came when visitors would see her. Brianna came when she needed content. I came every Tuesday and Sunday with Leo. He brought drawings, toy animals, crackers, and once a worm in a jar because he thought Grandma missed her garden. Grandma loved that worm like it was a diamond. Brianna walked in that day, saw Leo on the bed showing Grandma the jar, and said, "Of course, he gets to bring dirt inside. If I did that as a kid, Mom would have grounded me." Grandma looked at her. "If you had brought me a worm because you were thinking of my garden, I would have loved yours too." Brianna went quiet. My mother changed the subject. I did not. Grandma died in January of 2025, 8 days after Leo's 5th birthday. Her funeral was held in the old glass conservatory at the main garden center. She had planned that too. White camellias, no lilies, no open microphone, no slideshow set to sentimental piano music. People behave badly near microphones, she had told Nora. My mother wore black lace and received condolences like awards. Brianna cried loudly during the first song, then checked her phone under the program. Leo sat on my lap holding a packet of basil seeds Grandma had left for him in a small envelope labeled Little Fox, Spring Project. After the funeral, the family gathered at my mother's house. That was when the first trust announcement happened. Not the full reading. Grandma hated theatrical will readings. Nora simply explained that the Ellis Family Trust would continue under professional administration for at least 3 years. My mother would receive monthly distributions under review. Brianna would receive limited distributions tied to employment and debt counseling. I would not receive monthly distributions because Grandma had already helped me buy my house after Simon died, something my mother had always described as favoritism and Grandma described as housing a widow and child. Leo was given a small education trust and future beneficiary status. Nothing huge. Nothing that should have threatened grown women. My mother's lips tightened anyway, Brianna asked. "So the kid gets his own account?" Nora said, "Leonard Hart has an education trust. Yes, his name is Leo," Brianna said. Nora looked at her. "Then perhaps use it kindly." I almost smiled. Grandma had also left each of us personal items. My mother received jewelry. Brianna received a vintage sewing table she had once admired and immediately complained she had no room for. I received Grandma's handwritten plant journals. Leo received a brass fox paperweight from her desk and a letter he would open when he turned 18. My mother said nothing about the paperweight in public. In the kitchen later, I heard her whisper to Brianna, "Even dead, she's making him special." I should have left then. Instead, I washed coffee cups. That is what reliable daughters do when they are trying not to hear war being declared. The months after Grandma died were strange. My mother became softer toward me, or pretended to. She called more, invited me to lunch, asked about Leo. Brianna began offering to take him places. Small places, ice cream, the park, the bookstore. I said no at first. Then Mom said, "Celia, you cannot punish your sister forever because she is awkward with grief." Grief, that wonderful family solvent. Pour it over anything and blame becomes harder to hold. Brianna did seem different sometimes. She brought Leo a dinosaur sticker book. She asked him about kindergarten. She remembered his peanut allergy, which I took as evidence of maturity, and later recognized as evidence of basic adult functioning. I never left him alone with her for long. 10 minutes while I showered at Mom's house. 15 minutes in the backyard while I helped set the table. A walk to the corner bakery while I stayed behind with my mother. Each time, nothing happened. Each time, my nervous system relaxed 1 inch. That is how boundaries fail. Not in one dramatic surrender, but in tiny moments where danger behaves just long enough for you to feel unreasonable. In November of 2025, Brianna tried to pick Leo up from school without telling me. The office refused because she was not authorized. She called me furious, saying she wanted to surprise him. I told her never to do that again. She cried. Mom said I had humiliated her. I did not tell Nora. I told myself the school handled it. I told myself no harm done. I told myself Grandma had been cautious, not prophetic. At Christmas, my mother hosted dinner. Leo helped my father put batteries in a train set. My father is quiet, conflict avoidant, and kind in ways that often arrive too late. He had never stood up to Mom consistently, but he loved Leo with an uncomplicated warmth that made my son glow. During dessert, Dad said, "This boy has Margaret's hands. Look how carefully he fixes things." Leo beamed. Brianna stopped eating. My mother said, "Arthur, don't start." Dad looked confused. "Start what?" She smiled thinly, making announcements. The table went cold. Leo did not notice. Children often do not hear the first crack. They only feel the collapse. By March 2026, the jealousy had a shape. Brianna complained that Dad took Leo to the garden center more than he took her calls. Mom said Dad was emotionally replacing the family with my child. Brianna said Grandma had poisoned him before she died. I said they were talking about a 5-year-old. Mom said, "You always hide behind his age." His age was the point. He was 5. On Friday, April 10th, my mother invited us to brunch for the next morning. She said Dad wanted to see Leo, and Brianna wanted to take him to Riverbend Zoo to choose a memorial shelf gift for Grandma's birthday. Grandma would have turned 82 that weekend. The family still kept a shelf in Dad's den with her photo seed packets and small objects Leo chose because he believed dead people liked presents if you picked carefully. The zoo was Brianna's idea, apparently. Leo loved the otter exhibit, and Grandma had once taken him there with a thermos of lemonade. Brianna said they would be gone 1 hour. She said she wanted to make things right. She said she knew she had been jealous and childish and wanted to build her own bond with him. I wanted to believe her so badly that my common sense became quiet. That morning, Leo wore a green dinosaur t-shirt and his yellow rain boots, even though the forecast was clear. He carried a small backpack with applesauce, allergy wipes, his kid phone watch, and $18 in birthday money Dad had given him to pick Grandma's shelf gift. In the car, he asked, "Aunt Brianna won't be mad if I pick an otter again?" "No, baby. Grandma liked otters. She liked what you liked." He thought about that all the way to my mother's house. When we arrived, Mom was in the sunroom, not the kitchen. That should have registered. She always hosted in the kitchen unless she wanted a stage. The sunroom had wicker furniture, pale cushions, and a wall of windows overlooking the garden. Dad was outside pruning roses. Brianna arrived 5 minutes later in athletic wear, sunglasses on her head, smiling too brightly. "Zoo, buddy," she said to Leo. "Ready?" He looked at me. I nodded. I can still see him leaving through the back door with her. Backpack bouncing, yellow boots flashing, trusting me because I had told him it was safe. They left at 10:02. I know because I checked the time on my phone after the door closed. My mother poured coffee. She had made almond cake, which I hate and Brianna loves. She gave me the corner piece and said, "I am trying, Seal," I asked. "At what?" She looked hurt, being close. That was how she kept me seated, not with force. With the suggestion that leaving would prove I was the problem, at 10:47, Leo's watch pinged at Riverbend Zoo near the main entrance. I texted Brianna, "All good?" She sent a photo of Leo from behind, standing near the otter window. The photo showed his yellow boots and one hand pressed to the glass. "See?" she wrote. "Having fun." At 11:21, the watch ping moved near the gift shop. That made sense. I relaxed. My mother brought out old photo albums. Real ones. Grandma with me as a toddler. Dad as a younger man holding a tray of seedlings. Brianna at 6 wearing a paper crown. Mom had selected the album carefully because nostalgia is one of her sharpest instruments. She turned pages slowly and said things like, "We had such sweet years." As if sweetness in one photograph could erase bitterness in another room. At 11:39, Leo's watch still showed the zoo. I texted Brianna again. "Heading back soon?" She replied, "He is being impossible about choosing." "You know how he is." I looked at that sentence for a long time. You know how he is. Leo is thoughtful, not impossible. He takes time because he believes choices matter. My grandmother loved that about him. At 12:06, the sunroom door opened. Brianna walked in alone. She carried an empty zoo gift bag. The bag had a receipt inside and nothing else. She placed it on the wicker table like a prop and smiled. "Relax," she said. "I left Leo at the zoo." For a second, my brain rejected the sentence, not because I did not hear it, because some truths are so obscene they arrive without grammar. My mother laughed. "Good," she said. "Maybe now he'll stop acting like Grandma Margaret's little prince." Dad, outside the window, looked up from the rose bushes. I saw him through the glass. He did not yet know what had been said. He only saw my face change. Brianna dropped into a chair and crossed one leg over the other. Before you explode, he's fine. I told a staff person he was wandering. They'll handle it. I stood slowly. Where exactly is my son? She rolled her eyes. At the zoo, Celia. Obviously. He refused to leave the Otter gift shop because he wanted some ugly stuffed thing, and I was not going to reward a tantrum. Did you leave him with an employee? I told someone near the exit there was a kid wandering. Did you tell them his name? She looked annoyed. I am not a daycare worker, my mother said. Do not make this dramatic. Children need to learn they are not always the center. I looked at her. My own mother, grandmother to my child. Sittings in sunlight, drinking coffee, defending abandonment as character education. That moment did something permanent. It was not rage first. It was clarity. I picked up my purse. My hands were steady, which frightened me later. I walked out of the sunroom, down the hall, and into the small bathroom near the foyer. I locked the door. I opened my phone. First, I called Riverbend Zoo security. A woman answered. I gave my name, Leo's full name, age, clothing, allergy information, and last known watch location. She put me on hold. The hold music was cheerful and horrible. 49 seconds later, a man came on. Mrs. Hart, this is Sergeant Malik Reyes with Zoo Security. Your son is safe. He is with our staff at the North Guest Services desk. We contacted Portland Police for documentation because he was reported unaccompanied. He is calm. He has his backpack. He is asking for you. I closed my eyes. Tell him Mama is coming. We will. Then I called Nora Keene. Nora answered on the first ring, which she never did. I said, the minor safety clause is triggered. She did not ask me if I was sure. She did not ask whether I wanted to think about it. She asked the questions Grandma had trained her to ask. Is Leo safe? Yes. Zoo security. Police documentation. Who endangered him? Brianna. Mom laughed and approved it. Any witnesses? Zoo staff. Security. GPS watch. Brianna admitted it in Mom's sunroom. Are you going to him now? Yes. Good. Do not confront further. Do not argue. Do not negotiate. Take Leo home after the report. I will notify Walt and your father. Expect documents before evening. Nora. Yes, she is 5 minutes away from convincing herself it was a joke. Nora's voice softened by exactly 1 degree. That is why your grandmother wrote it down. I left the bathroom. In the sunroom, Brianna was eating almond cake. My mother was looking at her phone. Dad had come inside and was standing in the doorway with dirt on his gardening gloves. I said, do not follow me. Do not call me. Do not come to my house. Mom stood. Celia, this is absurd. Dad looked at me. Where is Leo? At Zoo Security because Brianna left him there. His face changed in a way I had never seen. He removed his gloves slowly and put them on the table. Brianna said, Oh my God, Dad, he is fine. Dad did not look at her. He looked at my mother. Claire, he said, did you know? My mother's mouth opened. I did not stay to hear the answer. I drove to the zoo with both hands on the wheel and Nora's sentence repeating in my head. That is why your grandmother wrote it down. Riverbend Zoo was crowded because it was a Saturday with sun after a week of rain. Families pushed strollers past the entrance. Children held maps. A man in a dinosaur t-shirt sold bubble wands near the gate. The normalcy of it made me want to scream. I did not scream. Security met me at the entrance. Sergeant Reyes was tall, calm, and kind in the practiced way of people who handle frightened parents without becoming frightened themselves. He walked me to the North Guest Services desk, past the penguin exhibit, past the gift shop, past a mural of sea otters holding hands. Leo sat in a plastic chair behind the counter. His yellow boots did not touch the floor. He held a stuffed otter against his chest with both arms. A woman in a blue vest sat beside him reading from a zoo map like it was a storybook. He saw me and stood. He did not run. That hurt more than if he had. He was trying to be good. I knelt before he reached me. Hi, little fox. His face crumpled only a little. Aunt Brianna said wait by the otters, but then she was gone. I know. Did I choose too slowly? No, she said Grandma would be bored of otters. I closed my eyes for half a second. Then I opened them and looked directly at my son. Grandma never got bored of anything you loved. He nodded like he wanted to believe me but needed time. The employee in the blue vest introduced herself as Talia Nguyen. She had found Leo near the gift shop at 11. 18 after he asked another child's father if he had seen a tall aunt with sunglasses. Talia brought him to guest services. Zoo security initiated their lost child protocol. Police were called for documentation after reviewing entrance footage and realizing the adult who brought him had left the property. Sergeant Reyes handed me a report number. "This will be logged as child abandonment by a temporary caregiver," he said. "The district attorney will decide whether anything further is appropriate. At minimum, there is a permanent record." Permanent record. 2 words my mother and sister had never feared because consequences had always been temporary in our family. I signed the statement. Talia wrote hers. Sergeant Reyes noted the GPS watch ping, the exit footage, and Brianna's vehicle leaving the parking lot at 11:09. When we left, Leo asked if he could still buy the otter. I paid for it. He named it Margaret. I took Leo home first. Not to my mother's house. Not to Dad. Home. I made him buttered noodles because he asked for them. He ate 6 bites and fell asleep on the couch with the stuffed otter under his chin. I sat beside him and watched his chest rise and fall until my phone buzzed Nora. "The first notice has been delivered," she said. "To Mom? To all relevant parties. What does that mean?" "It means Walt is at your mother's house with the trust protector notice, the trigger packet, and the recording your grandmother left for this specific clause." I stood and walked into the kitchen so Leo would not wake. "Recording?" Nora paused. "Margaret recorded instructions for several possible events." I gripped the counter. She knew, she anticipated. That was very Nora, precise even when the truth was brutal. "What recording?" "Celia, I think you should hear it after they do." "Why?" "Because your grandmother wanted you with Leo first." She wrote that down too. At 1:41 that afternoon, Walt Adler arrived at my mother's house. Walt was not the family attorney. That distinction mattered. He was the independent trust protector named under the Ellis Family Trust. Retired judge, 72 years old, polite as a locked gate. He had known my grandmother for decades and once told me she was the only client who edited his punctuation. He carried a leather folio, a sealed envelope, and an old digital recorder. Dad opened the door. My mother was in the sunroom. Brianna had apparently begun crying sometime after I left, not because she felt guilt, according to Dad later, but because she realized I had called someone. Walt did not accept coffee. He did not sit in the sunroom. He asked everyone to come to the dining room because Grandma had specified a table, not couches, so no one can pretend this is comfort. Even dead, Grandma had stage direction. Walt placed the recorder in the center of the dining table and said, "Claire Winthrop, Brianna Vale, this notice concerns the Ellis Family Trust Minor Safety Clause, amended July 17, 2024, by Margaret Ellis with full capacity and independent counsel." My mother said, "This is ridiculous. Leo was not harmed." Walt looked at her. "The clause does not require injury. It requires knowing endangerment, abandonment, unauthorized separation, or participation in such conduct." Brianna said, "It was 20 minutes. Dad said, "You left a 5-year-old at a zoo." Brianna snapped, "You were not even there." Dad answered, "For once, I came back." That silenced the room, he told me later. Walt pressed play. My grandmother's voice filled the dining room. It was thinner than I remembered, but unmistakable. Dry, warm, with that tiny scrape at the end of certain words from years of greenhouse dust and strong tea. "If you are hearing this," she said, "then someone has used Leo as a target." My mother made a sound. The recording continued. "Claire, I know you will call this dramatic. Brianna, I know you will call it unfair. I am past caring what either of you call things. I watched you resent a child for receiving love you did not earn by showing up. I watched you confuse attention with inheritance. I watched you mistake my patience for blindness." Dad later told me Brianna covered her mouth. Grandma's voice sharpened. "A child is not a lesson. A child is not leverage. A child is not a stage prop for adult jealousy. If you endangered Leo, you have removed yourself. Not Celia, not Nora, not Walt. You. The papers are already signed." The recording lasted 1 minute and 12 seconds. When it ended, no one spoke. Walt opened the folio. He laid out the documents one at a time. Trust amendment, capacity letter from Dr. Elaine Porter, minor safety clause, distribution schedule, trustee succession page, and the emergency trigger certification form signed by Nora 30 minutes after my call. My mother found her voice first. My mother was sick when she made these. Walt placed the capacity letter on top. Margaret Ellis was evaluated by an independent physician and found fully competent on July 10, 2024. She signed the amendment 1 week later. I witnessed it. Nora Keene notarized it. Your objection is noted and unsupported. Brianna said, I did not abandon him. I left him where employees could find him. Dad whispered, listen to yourself. Walt continued, under the clause, Brianna's discretionary distributions were suspended immediately pending review, then scheduled for termination unless the trust protector found credible evidence of mistake. Her eligibility for future trustee roles, advisory roles, or employment with any Ellis-owned entity was revoked permanently. The condo my grandmother's trust had been subsidizing for Brianna would receive 90-day termination notice. Any further distributions for Brianna would be redirected into Leo's education trust and a child safety nonprofit grandma had chosen. My mother's monthly distributions were placed under supervised review because she had participated by approving and minimizing the abandonment. Her role as potential successor, family advisor, was revoked. She would have to provide annual financial disclosures to receive any discretionary support going forward. My father, who had not been a beneficiary but had been named as an optional family advisor if he ever separated his decisions from my mother's influence, was given that role immediately, and I was named successor trustee after Nora's professional term. Brianna started sobbing halfway through. My mother did not cry. She read numbers. That told Walt everything. At 2:08, my phone lit up with texts. Brianna, you destroyed my life over a tantrum. Brianna, he was safe. Brianna, Grandma hated me. Mom, call me immediately. Mom, your grandmother was not well. Mom, your father is acting insane. Brianna, I said I was sorry. Brianna, are you seriously taking my condo? I did not answer. Leo slept through all of it. That is the only part of that afternoon I consider mercy. At 3:30, Dad came to my house alone. He stood on the porch holding his gardening gloves, like he did not know where else to put his hands. I almost did not open the door. Then I remembered his face when he asked my mother if she knew. I opened it. He looked older than he had that morning. Is he asleep? He asked. Yes. Good. We stood in the doorway for a long moment. My father has never been good with words, but silence has many dialects. His usual silence avoided. This silence carried something. Finally, he said, I should have stopped them before there was anything to stop. I did not comfort him. He nodded as if he deserved that. I am going to stay at a hotel tonight, he said. Maybe longer, Dad. He looked at me. Did Mom know Brianna planned it? His face folded. I do not know, he said, but she was glad when it happened. That answer was worse and more honest than yes. He asked if he could see Leo from the doorway. I let him. Dad stood at the edge of the living room while my son slept with the stuffed otter under his chin. He did not touch him. He whispered, I am sorry, little man. Then he left. He did not return to my mother's house that night. The next week was paperwork. The kind of paperwork that looks boring from the outside and feels like demolition inside. Monday morning, I removed Brianna and my mother from every school pickup authorization. The front office administrator, Mrs. Patel, did not ask for the whole story. She read my face and slid the form across the desk. Do we need an alert note? She asked. Yes, she typed. No release to Claire Winthrop or Brianna Vale under any circumstances. Contact mother directly. Call security if either attempts pickup. Seeing those words in a school database made me feel both safer and ashamed. Not ashamed of the boundary, ashamed that I had not made it sooner. Then I went to Leo's pediatrician. I removed my mother from emergency medical contact. Added Dad, added Nora as legal notification only. The nurse updated the file and said, We see this more often than people think. That sentence haunted me. I changed the locks at home. Not because either of them had keys, but because my mother had once borrowed my spare and returned it too quickly. I changed the alarm code, the garage code, the streaming passwords, the grocery delivery password, the family photo album access. I removed Mom from location sharing. I blocked Brianna on Leo's Kid Watch. I told the babysitter. I told the neighbor. I told the school. Every removed access point felt like closing a window before a storm. My mother called the removal paranoid. Nora called it late but correct. I liked Nora's version better. Leo returned to kindergarten 2 days later. I almost kept him home, but routines are a form of medicine for children when adults have broken trust. His teacher, Ms. Avery, met us at the classroom door. She knelt to Leo's level and said, I heard you had a very big weekend. He nodded. Do you want to tell me anything about it or just hang up your backpack? He thought about it. My otter is named Margaret. That is a strong name. She watches things. Miss Avery looked up at me for half a second. Good. We like watchers. He went inside. I cried in my car for the first time. Not at Target. Not on the phone. Not when Grandma's recording played. In the school parking lot, with other parents unloading lunchboxes and a crossing guard waving traffic through, I finally cried because my son had turned a stuffed animal into a security system. Children make meaning out of what adults hand them. I hated what had been handed to him. That afternoon, he asked if Aunt Brianna was in trouble. I said yes. Because she left before me? Yes. Did she forget? I sat beside him on the couch. No, baby. She made a bad choice. He looked at the otter in his lap. Grandma Margaret would not forget me. No, I said. She never did. That answer seemed to satisfy him. It did not satisfy me. But motherhood often means giving the answer a child can hold while you carry the rest into another room. Brianna's public version arrived by Wednesday. Of course it did. She posted a soft focus photo of herself looking out a window with the caption, "Sometimes people twist honest mistakes into punishment because they need control more than family." I did not see it because I had blocked her. My cousin Elise sent a screenshot with one message. Do you want me to say something? I wrote back, no. Let her talk. That was Nora's advice too. People who feel falsely accused usually provide facts, she said. People who know the facts hurt them provide philosophy. Brianna provided philosophy for 3 more days. Quotes about forgiveness, stories about toxic sisters, a repost about how children are resilient. That one nearly made me break my silence, but Nora stopped me with another sentence I wrote down. Do not debate with someone who abandoned a child and then posted about resilience. On Friday, Riverbend Zoo sent the preservation packet to Nora. Entrance footage, gift shop footage, Brianna exiting alone, Talia's statement, incident report, police documentation, and a scanned receipt showing Brianna purchased a latte at the zoo cafe at 11:03, 2 minutes before leaving through the south gate. The receipt mattered because she later claimed she had searched frantically for Leo before leaving. The footage showed she bought coffee first. Coffee. My son was standing near otters with a stuffed animal and an unanswered question, and my sister bought coffee. When Nora told me that detail, I did not rage. I laughed once, a horrible sound. Because there are moments when cruelty is too small to be cinematic. It is not a villain monologue. It is a latte receipt. My mother's tactic was different. She went private. She called relatives. She told them Grandma had been manipulated by Nora. She said Dad was confused by grief. She said I was weaponizing Leo to seize control of the trust. She said Brianna had made a mistake, and I was using one mistake to destroy her future. One mistake. That phrase became the family fog machine. One mistake did not include the school pickup attempt in November. One mistake did not include years of jealousy. One mistake did not include Mom's laugh in the sunroom. One mistake did not include the fact that Brianna left the zoo, drove across town, and announced it like a joke. Dad called me Sunday night from the hotel. Your mother wants me to say you are overreacting. What do you want to say? He was quiet. I want to say I am sorry I taught you to handle things alone. I sat down. Dad continued. Your grandmother used to tell me that not choosing is still choosing. I thought she meant politics. I almost smiled. She meant Mom, I said. I know that now. That was the first real conversation I had ever had with my father. It lasted 7 minutes. We did not fix 30 years, but a door opened, not wide, enough. He moved into a furnished apartment 2 weeks later. My mother told everyone he was having a late-life crisis. Maybe he was. Maybe clarity feels like crisis when you have spent decades calling avoidance peace. The formal trust review meeting took place on May 23rd at Grandma's former garden center office. Nora chose the location deliberately. Grandma's old desk was still there, scarred from years of pots, invoices, coffee mugs, and one burn mark from the time Grandpa Thomas put a soldering tool down without thinking. On the wall hung a framed photograph of Grandma holding pruning shears like a weapon. Brianna arrived with our mother. Dad arrived alone. I arrived with Leo because Grandma had specified that any meeting about harm to a child should not hide the existence of the child. Though Nora arranged for him to sit in the next room with Talia from the zoo, who had volunteered to watch him after giving her statement. Talia brought coloring books. Leo brought Margaret the otter. Nora opened the meeting by reading the clause aloud. No beneficiary shall retain discretionary distribution rights, advisory eligibility, trustee succession, or trust subsidized support if credible documentation establishes that said beneficiary knowingly endangered, abandoned, threatened, exploited, or leveraged a minor descendant for personal, financial, emotional, or retaliatory purposes. My mother said, "This language is vindictive." Nora replied, "Margaret called it protective." Brianna cried through the first 10 minutes, then she got angry. "I did not know the zoo would call police." That was the closest she came to confession, Nora said. "What did you think would happen?" "I thought he would be scared for a few minutes, and then Celia would finally understand." "Understand what?" Brianna looked at me. "That he is not the only person who lost someone." The room went still. There it was. The bottom of the well, Leo was loved by Grandma after losing his father, and Brianna experienced that love as theft. I did not speak immediately. I waited until my voice would not shake. "You are right that Leo is not the only person who lost someone," I said, "but he is the only person you left alone at a zoo to prove a point." Brianna covered her face. My mother said, "Celia, she is grieving." Nora looked up from her notes. "Claire, do you wish to go on record defending the conduct?" Mom's mouth closed. That was the beauty of Nora. She knew when a family sentence needed to become a legal one. Dad sat at the far end of the table, hands folded. He looked at Brianna, then at Mom, then at me. "I want to make a statement," he said. My mother turned sharply. "Arthur." He did not look at her. "I was outside when Brianna returned without Leo," he said. "I came in after Celia left. Claire said the child needed to learn his place. Brianna said Celia would never cut us off because she needed family. I have stayed silent in this marriage for too long." "I am not staying silent about this." Mom stared at him like he had spoken a language she did not know he understood. Nora asked, "Will you sign that statement?" "Yes." Dad signed before my mother could breathe. That signature did more to dismantle my family's old structure than any argument I had ever made, because the man who always stepped onto the porch had finally stayed in the room. Grandma would have been proud. She would also have said, "Took him long enough." Both would be true. The trust consequences became final that day. Brianna's distributions were terminated. The trust-subsidized condo would end in 90 days. Her remaining restricted share would be held until age 55, with hardship access only through independent review and mandatory proof of employment, therapy attendance, and no contact with Leo. My mother's distributions were reduced by half and moved to reimbursement-only support for verified medical, housing, and insurance expenses. No cash transfers, no discretionary lifestyle payments. Her advisory role was permanently revoked. Dad's separation from the household became relevant. Nora added him as interim family liaison for non-financial communications involving me and Leo, which sounds absurdly formal until you have lived inside a family where every informal path was used to smuggle guilt. I was confirmed as successor trustee after Nora's 3-year professional term. Brianna began sobbing when Nora explained the condo. "Where am I supposed to go?" Nora said. "You have 90 days and full capacity to make adult decisions." My mother whispered, "Margaret would never throw her out." I stood then. Grandma did not throw anyone out. She wrote down the door. Brianna walked through it, holding my son's safety in her hand. Mom looked at me with something close to hatred. Maybe not hatred. Maybe grief realizing it had lost its costume. After the meeting, Brianna tried to approach Leo in the next room. Talia stepped between them before I moved. Quietly, professionally. "Perfectly," Brianna said. "I just want to say sorry." Leo looked at me. I said, "Not today." He looked back at his coloring page. "Not today" became the first boundary he ever saw me place with my whole body. The summer that followed was not clean. People imagine justice as a door closing neatly. In reality, justice produces paperwork, voicemail, relatives with opinions, and children who ask questions while eating cereal. Leo asked 3 questions often. "Is Aunt Brianna still mad?" "Yes, but that is hers to handle." "Can Grandma Claire still come to my birthday?" "No." "Baby, did Great-Grandma know the zoo?" That question always stopped me. "No," I said the first time. "She knew love should make plans." He liked that answer. I liked it too, though it made me cry in the pantry later. Mom sent gifts. I returned them unopened. Brianna sent a letter covered in stickers that said she missed her zoo buddy. Nora advised me to keep it and not respond. Dad visited every Saturday morning. He brought pastries, fixed little things around the house, and slowly learned how to talk to Leo without looking at me for permission. One Saturday, Leo asked him, "Why did Aunt Brianna leave me?" Dad closed his eyes. I almost rescued him. Old reflex, then he opened them and said, "Because she was angry at the wrong person and she made a dangerous choice. It was not your fault." Leo considered this. "Did she say sorry?" "Not the right way yet." "What is the right way?" Dad looked at me. I said, "The right way tells the truth without asking you to make them feel better." Leo nodded like that made perfect sense. Children understand accountability when adults stop decorating it. That sentence stayed in our house after that. The right way tells the truth. In August, the 90 days ended. Brianna moved out of the condo. Not gracefully. She posted photos of boxes with captions about forced independence and family betrayal. My mother helped her rent a smaller apartment farther east, then complained to Dad that she had no cash because the trust had become cruelly restrictive. Dad did not argue. He forwarded her the budget worksheet Nora's office had provided and asked if she wanted help filling it out. She did not reply. Brianna started therapy in September. I know because she wrote to Nora asking whether therapy attendance would count toward future hardship review. Nora replied that genuine treatment was not a punch card. I printed that email and laughed for the first time about anything involving my sister, not because therapy is funny, because Nora was, by October. Mom had stopped telling relatives I manipulated Grandma and started telling them the trust was complicated. That was progress in her language. Complicated meant she could no longer win the facts. At Thanksgiving, Dad came to my house. Just Dad. He brought stuffing. Leo brought Margaret the otter to the table, and we set a small framed photo of Grandma near the salt. Leo insisted she needed a napkin. We gave her one. During dinner, Dad said, "Your grandmother used to say inheritance is not what people get. It is what they reveal when they think they deserve it." I stared at him. She said that? All the time. She never said it to me. She probably thought you already knew. I looked at Leo carefully feeding a pea to the stuffed otter's stitched mouth. "I am learning." Dad nodded. "We all are," he said. That was generous, not entirely accurate, but generous. The final piece came on Grandma's birthday the following year. Nora called and asked me to come to her office. No emergency, no crisis. Just one envelope Grandma had left for me after the first full year of enforcement, if the minor safety clause was ever triggered. I sat in Nora's conference room with a cup of tea I did not drink. The envelope was cream, heavy, and addressed in Grandma's handwriting, "Celia, after the storm." Inside was one page. "My dear girl, if you are reading this, then I was right in a way I prayed not to be. I am sorry. Not sorry for the papers. Sorry you needed them. I know you will wonder whether using them made you hard. It did not. Hard people do not protect children from adults. Hard people ask children to absorb adult pain. You are not hard. You are done being used as padding. I hope Leo is safe. I hope you are learning that safety is not the same as everyone being pleased. I hope Claire finds truth before old age makes excuses sound too much like memory. I hope Brianna receives help, though not at your son's expense. Put a small living thing in soil today. Let it need water without demanding apology. Love, Grandma," I cried in Nora's office. Nora handed me tissues without comment. Then she handed me a small packet of basil seeds. "Margaret left these too," she said. She was very committed to theme. That afternoon, Leo and I planted the basil in a blue pot on our kitchen windowsill. He pressed the soil down with 2 fingers, exactly the way Grandma had taught him in her video. He asked if basil remembers people. "I think we remember people with basil," I said. He accepted that. Later, he placed Margaret the otter beside the pot to guard it. By spring, the basil grew wildly. Too much for the pot. We clipped it into pasta, eggs, sandwiches, lemonade. Every time we used it, Leo said, "Great-grandma is in dinner." I never corrected him. As for my mother and sister, they exist at a distance now. Brianna sends letters through Nora twice a year. Some are better than others. One said, "I wanted him to feel what I felt." Nora advised no response. Another said, "I am beginning to understand that what I felt was not his job." I kept that one. My mother has not apologized. She has adjusted. There is a difference. She sends birthday cards with no money and no guilt notes because Nora returns anything else. Dad sees her occasionally for legal matters related to their separation. He says she is smaller. I do not ask whether he means physically or otherwise. Dad remains in our lives. Not as a hero, not as a redeemed patriarch, as a man learning to stay in rooms where truth is spoken. That is enough for now. Leo is 6 now. He remembers the zoo, but not every detail. Children are merciful that way. He remembers Talia, the security desk, the otter, and me kneeling in front of him saying it was not his mistake. That is the sentence I care about. It was not his mistake. It never was. There was one more thing Grandma had prepared that I did not learn until winter. She had not only written trust clauses, she had built a record of patterns. Nora called it the Family Conduct Archive, which sounded cold until I saw what was inside. It was not a diary full of complaints. Grandma would have hated that. It was dates, names, short descriptions, and supporting documents. November 2023. Brianna attempted to pressure Edmund for a vehicle purchase. Video saved. February 2024, Claire stated Leo receives too much sympathy because of Simon's death. Witness, Margaret. May 2024, Brianna requested access to Leo's school schedule. Declined. September 2024, Claire suggested Celia was using widowhood to gain trust preference. Recorded phone memo. I asked Nora how Grandma had the strength to write it all while she was sick. Nora said, "Your grandmother believed memory becomes vulnerable when families punish clarity." That sentence changed how I thought about records. I used to think keeping records meant preparing for war. Now I think sometimes it means refusing to let love be rewritten by the loudest person after you are gone. Grandma knew her voice would leave first, so she gave it paper. I wish I could say I accepted that without guilt. I did not. For weeks after the trust review, I wondered whether I had become too hard. Brianna's condo was gone. Mom's money was restricted. Dad had left the house. Relatives were whispering. All because I made one phone call. That is how guilt lies. It starts the story at your response. Nora corrected me during one meeting when I said, after I triggered the clause. She interrupted. "Celia, you reported the trigger. You did not create it." I said, "It feels like I did." "Of course it does. You were trained to experience other people's consequences as your misconduct." I wrote that down in the margins of a grocery list. Trained to experience other people's consequences as my misconduct. I kept that scrap in my wallet for months. Every time Mom sent a message through a cousin. Every time Brianna hinted at homelessness. Every time someone said Grandma would have wanted peace. I read it. Other people's consequences are not my misconduct. It took a while to believe, but belief also grows if watered. The first time Leo returned to the zoo, we did not go alone. Dad came with us, and Talia met us at the entrance during her lunch break. I had asked Leo 3 times if he wanted to go somewhere else. Aquarium, science museum, park. He said, the otters didn't do anything wrong, so we went. He wore the same yellow rain boots, though they were getting tight. He held my hand until we reached the otter exhibit, then let go and stepped close to the glass. For a moment, I saw his small body standing where he had stood that day, waiting for someone who had decided not to come back. My chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. Dad stood beside me. "Do you need to step away?" "No," Leo turned around. "Mama, look, they remember me." The otters did not remember him, obviously. They were busy being slippery and dramatic. But I said, maybe they do. Talia gave him a behind-the-scenes sticker and told him he had been very brave that day. Leo said, "I was waiting." She nodded. Waiting can be brave. He smiled. I had not thought of it that way. My son had not only been abandoned. He had waited. He had stayed where he was told. He had trusted adults would eventually become safe again. That trust became my responsibility to deserve. Brianna asked for mediation in January. Not with me directly. Through Nora. The request said she wanted a restorative family conversation around shared grief. I recognized the phrasing from therapy language and social media captions. I asked Nora what she thought. "I think restorative conversations require accountability before access," she said. Did Brianna include accountability? She used the word regret 7 times and responsibility 0 times. That answered that. I declined. A month later, Brianna sent a shorter letter. It said, "I left him because I wanted you to feel how replaceable I felt after Grandma died. That was cruel. Leo did not deserve it. I am not asking to see him. I am asking you to know I finally wrote that sentence without my therapist telling me first. I read it twice, then I put it in the drawer with the better letters. I did not reply, not because I wanted to punish her forever. Because my son's safety is not a reward for her progress. She can heal without access. She can grow without proximity. She can become a better person somewhere. My child does not have to test the theory. That is the boundary people misunderstand most. Forgiveness, if it ever comes, will not be a visitor badge. There is a photograph on my refrigerator now. It is not from the zoo. It is from our kitchen. 3 months later, Leo standing on a chair beside the basil pot, holding scissors too big for his hand while Dad watches from the doorway. The stuffed otter is on the counter. Captain Red, the maple tree is bright outside the window. Nothing dramatic is happening. No lawyer, no trust packet, no one crying in a sunroom. That is why I love it. Safety is not always a locked door or a signed clause. Sometimes safety is a boring afternoon where a child cuts basil into a bowl and nobody uses him to make a point. Sometimes safety is a school list updated, a phone number blocked, a grandfather learning to speak, a mother choosing not to answer a text that smells like old guilt. Grandma's trust protected Leo legally, but legal protection was only the frame. The real work was daily and ordinary, packing his lunch, checking his watch battery, telling the truth simply, letting him ask the same question more than once, saying, "No, you cannot see Aunt Brianna," without adding, "because she is bad, because children should not have to carry adult labels." I learned to say, "Because she made an unsafe choice, and my job is to keep you safe." That was enough. One evening, Leo asked, "Does keeping me safe make people mad?" I said, "Sometimes. Do you still do it?" "Always." He nodded, satisfied, and returned to coloring a green otter that I did not have the heart to tell him. Otters are not green. Maybe some are in families that finally tell the truth. Maybe some things become new colors when they survive. The last time I visited Grandma's grave, I did not bring flowers. I brought a small basil cutting in a paper cup. Leo insisted the cemetery dirt might be too lonely without roots. We planted it beside the stone, probably against some rule, and he patted the soil twice. "Will she know?" he asked. "Yes," I said. He looked at the name carved in granite. "Thank you for the papers, great-grandma. I had no prayer better than that. Some legacies arrive as money." Ours arrived as instructions, courage, and a locked door finally used for the right reason. Grandma would have called that practical love. Enough. Finally, near the end of this video, I want to ask you something directly. I pinned a question in the comments. If your sister abandoned your child in public because she was jealous of grandparent attention, would you ever allow her near your child again? Go to that pinned comment and tell me your honest opinion. I want to know what you would do in Celia's place. And if this story reached you, please like this video and subscribe to She Chose Herself. Your support helps this reach another parent being told to keep the peace after someone crossed a line no adult should ever cross. My sister left my son at the zoo. My mother laughed. My grandmother had been dead for 15 months. But her trust clause stood up when the living adults failed. One phone call did not erase Brianna's inheritance. Her own choice did. That is the part people like my sister never understand. Consequences are not cruelty. They are the bill for what you already ordered. I did not scream that day. I drove to my child. I called the lawyer. I changed every list, every code, every access point, and every story that had taught my son he should be quiet to keep adults comfortable. Grandma Margaret loved him enough to prepare. I love him enough to enforce it. And that is the inheritance I care about most.